attack from behind, then get the hell out and away. Questions? Comments? Motions?
Fred Richani of TSC Gaming. We have right here on the line a very special guest. She is an actress. She is somebody that's a part of one of the biggest video games in recent years. We're talking about Cyberpunk 2077. We are talking to Emily Woo Zeller, who plays Panam in Cyberpunk 2077. Also done a number of roles over the years. Emily, how's everything going?
Hey, good. Happy to be here.
Can you just talk about how you got involved with Cyberpunk?
It was a pretty traditional pathway, I guess. My agent sent me an audition for a project that I did not know was, in fact, this video game. And I auditioned. And then when they booked the job, she told me what game it was. And that's it. I didn't even know who Panam was going to be in terms of, you know, her significance in the game at all when it was booked.
Do you usually get any material ahead of time and know what you're reading, or is it right there on the spot?
For the most part, it's right there.
Okay.
Yeah, they really try not to. They don't give the actors too much. The less that they can have materials floating around in the world, the better. So
okay, that makes sense. I never thought of it that way. Okay,
Yeah.
that's awesome to know. A nice fun fact about voice acting. So, since you didn't know much or if any of the material coming into it, did anybody tip you off? Did your agent or somebody say, "Hey, by the way, this is a game by CD Projekt Red, who created a little game called The Witcher 3." Did you have any idea just the scope of this project?
Well, once I found out what the project was, then of course I knew, because I have a lot of friends who are hardcore gamers, and I didn't talk to them about it, but I had heard over the years about CD Projekt Red and, of course, Witcher.
Cyberpunk, like a lot of games like that, they're open world, not just deep when it comes to missions, side quests, and content and everything else, but dialogue. I mean, tons and tons of dialogue. How long were the days? How often did you have to recite different lines and everything?
For games, we have a director, and so the director is doing a lot of the guidance and helping with shaping of scenes. The director that I worked with the most was Pierce O'Toole, which, shout out to you, Pierce. He's amazing. He did a really, really great job. So smart and so articulate and so just with it. But yeah, so we run through scenes, we do a few takes. I did not have any direct interaction with any of the other actors, so we record our scenes all separately. It's really the director that's the glue that keeps everything together. And sometimes somebody from the creative side on CD Projekt Red directly, like a writer or something, would be present, which helped a lot too. Yeah. And so you go in for typically booked for 4-hour sessions. So you're going through as much as you can in 4 hours.
I'm assuming you saw the finished product. Have you had a chance to play the finished product and kind of play as or with Panam?
I have not yet. I'm sure everybody feels a little bit differently about this, but at this point, I've been in voiceover long enough that I'm comfortable with my own voice. But I mean, that's a lot of gameplay with myself. You know what I mean? Like, I'd be more interested, perhaps, in some other fantastical world, in continuing to be Panam and playing with the other characters. You know what I mean? I don't know that I really want to be a V and play with myself. But so if I, when I do get around to playing the game, I would play V and probably play with the other characters. I still, even if I do play the game, I wouldn't be playing with myself. I know what I did. I don't need to go back and hear it all over again. Yeah.
Hey, if it makes you feel better, I've been doing broadcasting for years, and I still find it weird sometimes when I hear my own voice on narrations and things like that. It's like, oh man, I sound like that. All right, I'm enough. I said it the first time. I don't need to hear it.
Yeah, exactly. Although I will say that, the way they animated her is gorgeous. She's beautiful. So I wouldn't mind seeing that. I don't want to have to listen to myself.
Understood. And I know with some voice actors that I've interviewed in the past, sometimes they get face scanned or do any kind of motion capturing as well. Did you get face scanned or motion captured at all when you were doing the game?
No, not for this. No.
Okay, because there was a lot of debate at the time of the release of the game, like who is Panam, and like they identified one actress, but it turned out to be you and everything else. So all right, that's kind of fun. So they
Yeah.
face scanned somebody else, but you did the voice.
Well, I don't know if they face scanned somebody else, but they did not use my face. So I don't know. They might have built her from scratch. I have no idea how they actually did it. Um, but they didn't use my face. So
Okay, there we go.
yeah.
At least we solved one part of the mystery. All right.
Yeah.
Cool. There you go. Now you've done so many projects. If somebody hits up your IMDb page, I mean, the list goes on and on. It's very impressive, spectacular
Mm,
career so far up to this point. But I'm curious for you, w- how did you get into acting? Did you dream about being a voice actor? Did you see yourself more on stage or in the silver screen? How did it all start for you?
totally. Yeah. Well, I have been performing since I was in utero. My mother was part of a Chinese folk dance group in LA, and she performed when she was 8 months pregnant with me. So very early on, obviously, dance was an important thing to her. As a Chinese immigrant, her parents neither had enough money nor saw the value in her doing any kind of extracurricular art classes. So when she became an adult and had a family of her own, she wanted to be able to give me and my sisters the opportunity to do that. So, and she was fortunate enough to, have a steady salary to be able to afford that. So we did sort of city classes, county classes, and local private stuff within the Chinese American community in Southern California. And so yeah, I started dancing, and my father was a professional musician before he settled down with the family. So he played guitar, and so we always had music, and I always sang with him. So I was singing and dancing from the very beginning. And then once I started getting more involved in school, then theater started folding into that. Um, but very early on, I identified being a voice as something that would be awesome to do, as a Disney character or something like that, right? Those are my first
Mhm.
introductions to the art. And then as I got older, I never really had a super strong desire to get on screen. Growing up in LA, for better or for worse, gave me a very particular perspective on the industry. And we definitely had the opportunities as mixed kids in the 80s to do commercial work and things like that. I think I did one spot for LA Kids when I was like, oh gosh, 8 or 9. We were performing for the Monterey Park, which is a city in LA, the Monterey Park City Hall, because it was Chinese New Year, and we always performed all around LA during Chinese New Year. And LA Kids was there filming it, and they were like, "Hey, you and you and you, like you kids, come here, just help us do the opening sequence to this LA Kids spot." I mean, this is still the 80s,
Yeah.
or I guess it would have been early 90s maybe. Um, and so that happened. But other than that, yeah, never a real strong desire for film. But I did love being on stage. Um, that felt like a second home to me. So yeah, voiceover and stage has always been kind of my thing.
That's awesome, and it's crazy. So you've pretty much been in showbiz or sort of tied to showbiz pretty much your entire life, which is pretty awesome. And obviously, actors have multiple projects, things of that nature. Sometimes you're on a series for a cup of coffee. Sometimes you're on for several years. When did you realize? I don't know if the right phrase is made it, but when did you realize? Okay, I'm firmly entrenched here, and I'm getting consistent work.
Arguably, that's still questionable for me. I don't know that an actor. I mean, maybe if you skyrocket into sort of A-list status and you make enough money and you're smart enough with that money to be able to feel financially secure, that you feel like, oh, okay, I'm like here now.
Yeah.
But I feel like even the people who win the big awards, the Tonys and the Grammys and the Oscars, that I don't know how secure even they feel. I mean, they call it a curse, right? After you get the one big award, that their next few movies will be really bad. I mean, at least you'll have those movies. That's something. We're not talking about the quality of the work. We're talking about getting work, right?
Yeah.
Um, yeah. So I don't know. I think it's still kind of a question for me, but I don't question my own ability as an artist as much anymore, which is a different thing. But yeah, I've been doing so the vast majority of my voiceover work is in audiobooks. And that I started doing full time beginning at the end of 2012. So I had started that aspect of it in 2009, but so I've been doing full time voiceover since then. So I guess we're coming up on 9 years now.
There's always still that kind of working actor mentality in the back of your mind because with showbiz, I mean, it's
Well, it's gig to gig.
you never,
to
yeah.
gig. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you don't, very rarely do you get signed on to something that is for sure going to last for a significant amount of time. It's always like, okay, cool. Are you available tomorrow for this thing that's going to run next month? Yes. Okay. What are you doing next month? Well, I don't know. We'll see what comes up, like
Yeah.
it's yeah, so
At some point, you lived in Hong Kong for a while, right?
for a short time, yeah, a couple years.
Okay, and so you lived in Hong Kong. Were you primarily working on anime then?
Yeah, yeah. I actually my first job when I was there was teaching dance, jazz and ballet at a local studio. But I was gigging a lot. I was doing shows, I was doing singing and dancing and theater, and then teaching dance during the day. And through that network of actors who were English speaking actors who were there, I got connected to the audition for the dubbing gig. And that's how that started. So yeah, so but for the majority of the time that I was there, I ended up doing dubbing for anime and commercials and films and stuff.
Including Pokemon, right? Which, well, I'm a big Pokemon fan, so I had to mention that.
Nice. Yeah, Pokemon actually happened when I came back to the States. Um, but yeah, the other shows, some of the ones were My Melody. Um, I played Kuromi in that, and Yakitate and Jinban Kaleidoscope, and um, oh gosh, there were so many shows. We did a season a week. So
Wow,
yeah. So
their
even
voices like
though
everywhere.
everywhere, yeah. Well, I don't know where they are now. We weren't allowed to have copies of our work
Ooh.
because it was Hong Kong, so there was no union. In the US, we have SAG-AFTRA, of which I'm a member. But yeah, before that, it was no union, so nobody was keeping watch on how much pay we got or what our breaks were or any access to residuals or copies of work or anything like that. So as far as I know, it's out in the world somewhere. I don't know.
So I was actually going to ask that, like, what's the biggest difference between Hong Kong and Hollywood? And it seems like the lack of unionization. I mean, is that just not a thing there, or is it just not encouraged?
Not as far as I know, it's not a thing there. But it's an issue in the US too. And we have SAG-AFTRA at least, but there is a lot of work that is non-union that also is in the US. So and anything that is non-union is going to be subject to the Wild Wild West.
You also have a pretty cool side project. If I have the name correctly, it's called Nice and Naughty.
Yeah, so that's one series. The company is called Love Bites Originals. And yeah, it's a side project of love. A fellow actor and narrator and writer, um, she and I connected a few years ago and realized that we had very similar visions about what we wanted to put out into the world. And so we got together, and it is very much a side project. We have to take our time with it. We do have a Patreon page because the more financial backing we get for it, the faster we can produce more. But so far, we have our baby first season,
Mhm.
and we're working on seasons 2 and 3 very actively right now. So hopefully, those will be out soon.
Without giving too much away, of course, of the story and
Mhm.
everything, can you just describe it a little bit for anybody that might want to contribute to the Patreon?
Sure, yeah, yeah. It's short story, romance, and erotica. So we wanted to put out shorter bits. The romance industry in the audiobook industry, within the audiobook industry, is huge. There's a huge number of people who were voracious readers and listeners, but it is in novel form. And we figured it would be nice to be able to have short stories that were also curated by both she and I to be very sex positive and to have all kinds of people from all walks of life, all ages, all sizes, all colors, all orientations, all genders, etc. Like mix it up, right? Like sometimes the romance genre, I think it's less so now, but sometimes it can get very bogged down in story tropes and stereotypes and these types of things. I mean, arguably, that's why a lot of the listeners, readers listen or read to that, because they don't want anything that's going to challenge them. They want that very stable stereotype or the archetype of the story or anything. But we wanted to put something out that was a little more colorful. So that's what we're doing, is we're building a community of writers too. So if you're a writer and you're interested in writing queer, colorful, or mixed company romance or erotica, let us know, because we're super open to building our world.
This is probably a silly question, but I would imagine with the explosion of Audible and just audio in general with podcasting, that industry is just kind of blown up, right?
Yeah, it's been on the rise. And know that it was during the recession not terribly affected. It was one of the few industries that was continuing to grow. I don't know how well the industry has done over the course of the pandemic, but it certainly has not really slowed. So I don't know if it's continued to grow, but it's definitely still alive and kicking.
Would you say with video games and just voice acting in general, that I don't wanna say they're pandemic proof, but they weren't as harmed by the pandemic compared to some other industries, like say, Broadway?
Yeah, and compared to other aspects of performing arts, for sure. Yeah, because it is something that you can do from home if you have the proper setup, and you're willing to. Because when you're doing it from home, you don't have a director, you don't have an engineer, you don't have anybody else on the creative team, and then you have all of the normal from home issues that can pop up.
Now, before we get you out of here, we always like to ask our guests some quick hit questions, just kind of rapid fire, some fun random questions just for people to get to know you better. Are you ready?
Okay.
Favorite late night snack or cheat meal?
Oh God, cheese.
Just any kind of cheese?
Yes.
Okay, there you go. You can't go wrong. What was your first gaming role?
This goes back. Sync, I think, General Kim. I think I played a general in some game that was out of the Ukraine or something like that.
All-time favorite actor?
Okay.
I'll give you two choices. We could do the quote unquote traditional actor, and then if there's a voice actor you happen to admire, since I don't think voice actors get enough love, feel free to.
Agreed. Voice actors don't get enough love. I'm going to give you a few. Okay. Favorite male, Gene Kelly. Favorite female, Frances McDormand. And favorite audiobook narrator. Okay, so this is what audiobook people are a tight-knit community. We're really tight. I love you all, but I love January LaVoy. I think she's amazing.
I was gonna ask you if you weren't an actor, what would you be? But I know you have this whole background in showbiz, so I'm gonna rephrase it. If you weren't in show business, if your parents weren't in showbiz, what would you be doing right now?
I'd be working in environmental science and combating climate change, 100%. It's always been my background. I have a science background, and I have always thought, if this doesn't work out, I'm going to pick that back up and I'm going to get into the field.
So do you have a science degree, or did you study environmental science?
I took pre-med classes in college and had a minor in nutritional sciences at UC Berkeley.
That's fantastic. Well, you know what? If they ever do a Captain Planet reboot, they should definitely cast you.
That'd be amazing.
All-time favorite movie or series?
Singing in the Rain.
What role did you play that you most related to? Or I guess what character did you play that you most related to personally?
Most related to... I mean, I've played a lot of characters in books that have been pretty spot on, but for video games, I think Panam definitely wins for that. Yeah, I really got her. I understood her.
Did you get to do any of the traditional media you normally would do for a big production like Cyberpunk, or did the pandemic kind of curtail that?
Yeah. As far
Okay.
as I know, the pandemic curtailed it. I certainly didn't do any of the pre things. There were a few things that like Keanu did, and I think Jeremy might have done. But yeah, I wasn't involved in those. So if anything was going to happen later, yeah, didn't
So,
happen.
so you didn't get to meet Keanu Reeves and ask him to say Arasaka in person, did you?
No, I didn't. But Keanu, I want to meet you. I really, really want to meet you, man.
He was really good in that game too, and my friends and I had a drinking contest every time we heard him say Arasaka. It's like, man, like find somebody as passionate as Johnny Silverhand about taking down the man.
Yeah, he did a great job for sure.
What's your most awkward career moment?
Ooh, awkward career moment. Oh gosh. I've learned to take everything that's awkward and turn it into like, I mean, this sounds so cliche. Excuse my French.
That's all good.
This sounds so cliche, but like truly, like my bar for what is awkward and what's embarrassing is basically non-existent. Like it's really hard to embarrass me. So any awkward moment would be like, something I would learn from. So that's my terrible answer to your question.
No, that's cool. All right, there you go. There you go. Actually, you can relate to Pan Am. Both of you guys have thick skin, so that's good.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, it's just kind of like whatever, dude. You do you. I'm gonna do me, and if you have a problem with that, that's your problem. As long as I'm not hurting anybody, who cares?
Voice acting. What are some do's and what are some don'ts? Let's just say an aspiring actor is watching this. They want to break into the industry. Maybe they just started, got their first gig. What are the biggest do's and don'ts of the voice acting industry?
Do study and practice. Take coaching, take lessons. Don't assume that just because everybody in your life has always told you that you have a nice voice, that means that you're also an actor. They're different things. So learn how to be an actor. And take your time. It takes a really long time, and you may never feel like you've fully made it. But yeah, I'd say just don't put all your eggs in that one basket. Treat it with respect, give it the time and dedication that it needs, but also know that it's going to take a really long time if ever you can get to a full-time position. And so, I always had 5 different jobs going at the same time. And that's just kind of the reality of the way it is.
You mentioned you taught ballet, right?
Yeah, well, yes, to babies, I taught ballet,
Mhm.
but mostly I'm a jazz and modern and ballroom and Chinese dance. Those
Oh,
are my specialties.
wow.
Yeah. Mhm.
With ballet, I've interviewed a couple ballet dancers before, and what y'all go through and what they go through is crazy as far as like the physical limits they push themselves to. What would you say
For sure.
is like the biggest misconception about ballet? Kind of a random question, but when you said ballet, it triggered me because I interview fighters. Full disclosure, I also interview fighters, combat sports athletes, and
Oh,
sometimes
nice.
they'll say, "Oh, this ain't ballet," and I'm thinking, ballet's not easy, dude.
Yeah. Well, there you go. That's a big misconception about ballet is that it's easy. I'll say this for maybe all of dance instead, because I don't want to speak on for, for ballet when that's not my specialty.
Cool.
Um,
So yeah, biggest misconception on dance.
that it's for girls, number one, um, and yeah, and that it's easy at certainly at the professional level. Um, I mean, anybody can dance. I will say that. And then I will also say that if you want to dance at the professional level, you do need years and years and years of training in addition, daily training. There were people who were like, that I knew that I came into in the performing arts world who were like, "Oh yeah, I dance. I'm a mover." They're like, "Oh, great. Well, tell me more about this because I've, literally every single day of my life since I was a wee lass, talk to me." And they'll be like, "Yeah, I took a tap class once a week for like a semester." And I'm like,
Ooh.
"Great. I am glad that was something that you could do, but that does not make you a dancer." So I'm sorry if that applies to you, but if it applies to you, don't call yourself a dancer. Just say you took a dance class. Like, dancers they're a different breed, I think. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, tremendous insight there. I appreciate it. And I appreciate all your insight, not just on your own career, but on the industry and show business as a whole, because I think there's a lot of misconceptions. A lot of people think it's easy. The people that are good and great, they make it look easy, but they don't see all the work that goes into it.
That's right. Yeah, you have to be extremely lucky and hardworking and talented to some degree. Um, and all of that needs to be working in order for it to make sense. And you have to really want it, because it is so hard. So if you don't want it enough, other things are going to become more attractive to you, and for good reason. There's nothing wrong with that, but with very few exceptions of like what I call the cult of personality. I mean, I didn't make that up, but you know, except for the handful of people that get put and become megastars because of their own personal personality, it happens because you have honed your work and your craft, and you've made connections, and you've been honest and had full integrity, and like people see that and they respect that, and then they want to hire you. So it takes a long time to build that cred.
Wow. Well, I was going to ask you what the best piece of advice is you give anybody for success, but I think you pretty much covered it there.
Yeah, that's probably what I'd say. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I really do appreciate the time. Before we let you go, where can fans find you online?
On Instagram, I am ZWooMan. That's ZWOOMAN. I'm technically also on Facebook. I'm not very active on Facebook. I'm generally not very active on social media in general. But I am on Instagram, and I am on Twitter with the same handle, ZWOOMAN. Yeah. And
Cool.
Love Bites Originals is Love BYTES Originals. Yeah.
Well, I thank you so much for the time. You can check Emily out, of course, in the various work she's involved in, especially Cyberpunk 2077, where she plays Panam Palmer. Emily, thank you so much for your time.
Thanks for having me.